Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to HitScan. At BlizzCon, Jeff Kaplan said that there is going to be a PTR patch very soon. In fact, he doubled down on this on Reddit with a clarification, saying that there was going to be a patch this week with the map rotation and no Horizon Lunar Colony Paris and competitive like we went over yesterday, and said that the PTR is likely going to be next week. We do know one thing that's in that PTR patch which I'll go over in a second, but we did assume that there'd be some minor balance changes in there too. However, Torbjorn and Baptiste got buffed yesterday, and not only did they get buffed, their changes didn't go through to the PTR and then through to live like every other change has in the history of Overwatch. They just went straight to retail, which to me personally feels like there might be more in this PTR patch coming up than meets the eye. Before I go over what we know now and speculate on what it could be, shout out to HyperX. I do want to talk about them towards the end of this video, specifically the mice, because there's a nice new setting in Overwatch that if you have a gaming mouse, like the HyperX Pulsefire, you can get a little bit more quality out of your aim. But we'll go over that towards the end of this video. There's only one thing that we know that's coming to the PTR so far, and that's the ability to queue for deathmatch, the ability to go into custom lobbies, and in the training range in a group if you're queuing for competitive. That's going on to the PTR to test. But the thing is, realistically, is there anybody actually going on to the PTR to test that? No. Usually these kind of changes are thrown in with other bits and pieces. And the fact that Jeff Kaplan has mentioned in two different cases that there is a PTR patch next week means that there might be a lot of stock in this. It's not like Jeff Kaplan to be like, oh hey yeah, there's a PTR patch coming with just this one change on, that's it. Some of the time these changes are wrapped in with other balance changes, smaller ones like we saw with Baptiste and Torbjorn. But then the Baptiste and Torbjorn changes would be on the PTR patch with the previous stuff that I just mentioned, right? It seems a really odd move for Blizzard to be doing this. And I really don't see them just putting out a PTR patch next week with the ability to queue for deathmatch, training range whilst waiting for competitive. That also means that competitive would have to be activating on the PTR, which would have even worse queue times for everybody. So again, who the hell is going to test it? Now this could be two things. The first thing is just a big balance patch. The reason why I say this, mostly because it's been a while since we had the one with 13 hero changes in, but I guess the most important one is that there's not going to be any competitive Overwatch played up until like February of next year. It means that Blizzard could be a bit more aggressive with their patching now that the Contenders Gauntlet is over and also the World Cup. It means that there's not going to be any competitive Overwatch for quite some time. And Blizzard are inhibited by the Overwatch League and timing their patches to not completely screw over the teams that are playing and therefore the investors as well that have put a lot of money into it. There's definitely a coincidence there. So there is a chance that we could see quite a few hero changes in there, and not only that, some pretty major changes too, either by the amount of heroes that are changed or how drastic some of these meta changes are. The other thing, and I'd say that this is very unlikely based off everything that went on at BlizzCon, but there is a chance, is that a new hero gets added to the PTR next week. And there are a few reasons why I believe that. I'm not just pulling it out of my ass. We have a PTR patch that's hitting. There's going to be a competitive mode in there with other stuff that you can do within the game whilst you're queuing. There could be balance patches like I just mentioned, but this year Blizzard have been a bit more flimsy with their schedule by reorganizing where stuff goes. They swapped Sigma with the Summer Games event earlier this year, and it wouldn't surprise me if Blizzard wanted their whole BlizzCon for Overwatch to be based around Overwatch 2. That they felt that talking about this new game mode and also being like, oh yep, there's a new hero coming very soon as well, would kind of muddy what they wanted to announce with Overwatch 2. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if at the start of this week we started getting teasers for something like Echo, if Echo was the new hero. Considering that Jeff Kaplan really didn't want to talk about her at all, that could be a good reason as to why. We don't want to talk about Echo because we want to talk about Overwatch 2 instead, but also Echo's coming to the PTR in 2 weeks time. We want that to be a bit of a surprise, something that we can focus on after BlizzCon. I could very much see that being a thing. It was also a similar thing that happened with Roadlock and Sigma. Instead of announcing both of them at the same time, being like, oh yep, we have this new competitive system, and also we have this new hero, they put Roadlock out a week before Sigma. And I believe that had Seagull streaming both events as well, which was quite surprising. I'd say that's very unlikely. I would definitely say don't get your hopes up, but I think we'd know based off this week if we start getting some teasers. There is a new comic out today for Alyssa Wong, but because it's comic book day, this is quite likely something else entirely, like I'm showing you on screen. But like I said, there is a chance that this could be something new, going over the new hero, maybe some more bits on Morga as an example. The point of this video is to highlight that the PTR we know is hitting next week, or likely next week, going off what Jeff Kaplan said. But we only know one piece in it, and it's a very small thing for Blizzard to want to test. And realistically, they know that nobody's going to play it onto the PTR to test out what it's like to queue and go to the training range at the same time. That's not going to get a lot of people logging onto the PTR to test it, is it really? So at least I would imagine some balance changes would be in there now that the World Cup is over and there's no competitive Overwatch that they can screw over. But also, it could very much be a new hero. It would also make sense why the answers on how many new heroes are going to be in the game before Overwatch 2 was a very muddy answer, because there's a new hero at least definitely coming very soon, because it's scheduled for one, but also they don't know when Overwatch 2 is going to release. It just all makes sense why they wouldn't want to talk about that. And I get why people assume the worst, but I don't know. Something smells really fishy here. And it's a typical Blizzard move for them to be like, okay, we're talking about this one thing at BlizzCon. Oh, by the way, there's a new hero coming out in 2 weeks. I would just be exceptionally surprised that if the PTR hit with just that one thing on, that would be it. One of the options that was recently put into the game is high precision mouse input, and this confused quite a lot of people, and most tried it out and didn't really notice any difference. And so Blizzard, specifically Derek Mulder, who is an Overwatch developer, came out and explained what the system is and what you should expect when it comes to using your gaming mouse and having this input activated. This is what he said. First, a quick summary on how aiming and shooting happens in Overwatch. Overwatch simulates or ticks every 60 milliseconds or at 62.5 Hz. Each tick, we update the player's aiming direction based on whatever raw input we've received from the mouse hardware since the previous tick. If the player has pressed primary fire, then we then launch their shot in that direction, assuming that they are alive, have ammo, and aren't in the middle of some other action, etc. Despite this being a conventional way of handling mouse input in a first-person shooter, we wanted to do better. Many gaming mice these days support 500 Hz, 1000 Hz, or even more in terms of polling rates. At 1000 Hz, this means that the mouse movement done between game ticks can be done by as many as 16 discrete mouse movements delivered from the hardware. They even give an example of this with a McCree turn-in. You can see each of the white lines, which is where the player is aiming every 16 milliseconds as this McCree is turning round, which is the normal amount. Compare that to this one, which is the high precision mouse input with more hertz. You can see that there's more red lines. It paints the whole area, which means that you have a bigger number of input. The game has more accurate information of what you're doing, making you a little bit more accurate in certain regards. Carrying on, they say that this means you can also functionally shoot between rendered frames or at high FPS on rendered frames that are in between ticks. But as Derek goes over, this will not change how it feels to look around. Looking around will feel the same as it always has, since the final rendered view always took into account any and all raw input messages received from hardware prior to that frame. It does come with a cost to your CPU usage, so do bear that in mind. And primary fire like tracking weapons like Zarya, Moira, Symmetra I guess, will not have any changes to how it behaves because of this. It might feel a bit better, but I guess this is more for other games like CSGO. I think has a 1000 Hz ticking rate for mouse input. It's to bump everything up, basically. But I did mention HyperX. Speaking of polling rates, all the HyperX Pulsefire mice, the Surge, the Dart, the FPS Pro, and the Pulsefire Core all have a 1000 Hz polling rate, which means that all of these HyperX mice work with this new input that you can now activate within Overwatch. I hope that was useful. It's not going to make you a godlike aimer, but it gives you a lot more control if you're the ones that like to use 144 Hz monitors or above. Want to make sure that your game is as accurate, as crisp and precise as it can be. This is worth giving a shot. And of course it works with other gaming mice too. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Sorry about the speculation, I suppose, in a good portion of this video of what could be next. I just got to speak my mind here and think that something may be up based off what stuff Jeff Kaplan and everybody else has said over the past couple of weeks. Thanks for watching, take care, we'll see you then.